We could all name saints who loved animals: Francis, Bridget, Martin de Porres. But the saint of this place had three very specific animal companions: a rooster, a mouse, and a fly. We're here in Timahoe in County Laois, where St Mochua lived and prayed in the 7th century. It's from Mochua that this place gets its name, St Mochua, the house of Mochua. Who was he? According to early sources, he was a Connacht man, and he was a man of war in his youth. He's described as being multum bellicosus, very pugnacious, always fighting and always victorious. But then at the age of 30, we're told that he was pierced by the spear of the fear of God, and he converted to Christ. He gave up physical warfare and took on the spiritual warfare of the monastic life. This made him, in the language of the time, an Laois, a former layman, somebody who had had a secular career before entering the monastery. And in fact, there's a 9th century poem written in Old Irish in Tala, which describes him as one of the three great Laois of Ireland, along with St Enda of Arran and St Bacon of Kilbeggan. His conversion was indeed radical. His uncle gave him a farmhouse in which to live as a monk, but St Mochua burnt down this house and burnt all his possessions as well. He wanted to be entirely free of attachment so as to depend entirely on divine providence. And it was as a wanderer free of possessions that he came to this deserted place, this wilderness, and it was here that he sought God in prayer. It's clear that his intercessory prayer was really valued by other people around him at the time. So there are two stories that illustrate this. One is about a very smart and well-educated monk, St Coleman from nearby County Offaly. This monk was at a certain moment puffed up with pride, thinking about his status in society, thinking about his physical beauty and how intelligent he was. And in that moment, he lost his memory entirely. All his learning was gone in that moment of pride. So Coleman fasted and prayed, and then he had a dream where an angel told him that he needed to come here and that St Mochua would pray over him and his memory would return. So that's what he did. And the point is made in this story that it is Mochua who didn't have anything like the learning that Coleman had. After all, he had spent his youth with a sword rather than with books. But it's this unlearned monk who prays efficaciously over St Coleman and his memory returns. When the scholar Coleman arrived here, Mochua was outside of the church, gathering up sticks, engaging in simple manual labour. We're told in the same source that a holy man not far from here was attempting to build a stone church. That might seem entirely normal to us, but at the time it was highly unusual. Every church in Ireland was made of wood at the time. And this man was having great difficulty in building a stone church. Why? The Irish weather. There was never enough dry weather for him to actually build the church, and it kept getting knocked down by heavy rains. And so this man reached out to many holy people, asking them to pray. When one man prayed, there would be fine weather for a few days. When another prayed, there'd be fine weather for a little longer, but it was never long enough, until finally St Mochua got in on the act. And it was when he began praying that there was a long spell of dry weather and the stone church could be built. So Mochua was invited to the consecration of the church. And we're told in a beautiful scene that Mochua, when he was climbing over what's now known as Slieve Margie, he encountered a herd of deer. And these deer came with him, 12 of them, all the way to the stone church, walking ahead of him like they were a herd of cattle. This brings us at last to his three pets, the rooster, the mouse, and the fly. A later source tells us that the rooster would wake up Mochua in the middle of the night to praise God in the night office. The mouse would nibble his ear to wake him up if he fell asleep when he was doing his many genuflections and when he was praying with his arms outstretched. If he became exhausted and fell asleep, the mouse would wake him up. And when Mochua was praying his psalms, the fly would be on the page of the Psalter, and would stop wherever Mochua stopped and stay there until the next day as a kind of a living bookmark. Perhaps this is just a cute story, but it reveals to us nevertheless what the successors of Mochua thought about him. He was perhaps not a superstar monk. He was not the most naturally gifted. He had wasted much of his youth in violence. But nevertheless, he had become a man of prayer, a man of penance, a man of integrity in the desert of Timahoe.